All right, I'm going to push go live here. It's not working, and that's okay. And screw Instagram. Oh, well. Who cares? It's not the important one anyway. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Crusaders. Good to see everybody this evening. Got Cody Reynolds here. I'm very excited to have him here from Scotland as the global ambassador for Angus Dundee of Tomintoul and Glencadam, which are two of my favorite brands that I had been asking for someone like me, Tater Dom and Donner Pat, to see you guys, to do something with them for years. And I'm like, finally, I met Todd, who's the local for them. He's like, hey, Cody's coming to town. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. When do we set something up? So we're going to have which you're lucky you guys get to do the interactive show tonight. And then, of course, if you're in person in town, you get to have the actual event and try all these awesome whiskeys later on this evening. So, hey, Richard, good to see you there. We'll see you next week. And Chris, good to see you down in Australia. Good times. I don't know, is Angus Dundee, is any Tomintoul or Glencadam available in Australia at all?
Tomintoul should be.
Okay, good.
I can't confirm if Glencadam is, but Tomintoul definitely should be.
All right, good. So, Chris, you can at least find Tomintoul, so that's a plus. I guess we should start with a little bit of history, and we should probably something on the glass. That's a good way to always start a stream. So, and tell a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start with me, and then we'll jump into the whiskey.
Perfect.
So, again, my name's Cody. I'm the global ambassador for Angus Dundee Distillers. Angus Dundee is a family-owned company, one of the few family-owned companies left in Scotland that have traditional distilleries. Most distilleries in Scotland today for single malts are owned by big multinationals that will own many different distilleries, as well as other spirits from across the world. Mm-hmm. I got into whiskey through family. My granddad was a big whiskey drinker. When I used to play football or soccer when I was younger, I used to come in from playing football and ask for an orange juice, and I'd be handed a whiskey instead.
It's a good grandfather.
At the time I was pretty young. I actually would have preferred the orange juice. It was pretty hot back then. I learned to love it. What used to happen is my granddad, he'd take me by the hand. He'd take me to the local place where you could buy booze.
Nice.
But on the way there, there was a pub, so you could actually stop and have a drink before you picked up your drink.
Awesome.
And I'd sit in front of a little bar stool like this, and I'd get to drink some normally apple juice out of a whiskey glass, and he'd have his whiskey, and then we'd get back, and my granny would smell the whiskey on his breath, and he'd get a scalp across the face. And we did that every weekend. So,
he's just ready for it when he got there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious.
So I sort of fell in love with whiskey at that point, but then I went to university in Edinburgh, which is the capital in Scotland. I was studying geography. And I was kind of looking for a dissertation topic because, I liked hills, I liked the glaciers, but when you start to study at university level, they do get a little bit boring.
Yeah, I imagine whiskey just slightly
it's
more
exciting than glaciers. A lot more Excel spreadsheets than I thought when I started, I'll tell you. But sadly, in my last year at uni, my granddad developed dementia, and I'd sit in front of the man. He'd look right through the back of my head like I was a ghost. He didn't know my name. He didn't know my mum's name. But if you slid a glass of whiskey in front of the man, his eyes would instantly focus. He'd know exactly who I was. You'd probably see me as that younger kid that you share the whiskeys with. But it was a real great way to connect with him before he did end up passing away. So I properly fell in love with it there. I did my dissertation on whiskey and how
freaking awesome dissertation.
It was basically how the country of Scotland has benefited from whiskey as a drink, but conversely, how the drink has benefited from the country as an ambassador. So this mutualistic relationship between product and place. You've got to remember that Scotch whiskey was a poor man's drink. It was, if you go back far enough, it was sidelined to farming. It was to have a little bit of booze through the winter, or maybe you can sell it if you can make enough and make a little bit more money for your family.
Right.
And somehow, over the course of, the last 200 years, or really the last 150 years, give or take, we've managed to turn it to a product that will allow someone like myself to fly over to Texas and,
which we appreciate. It's fantastic.
Talk to people about. And it's kind of crazy to me that such a small place like Scotland has managed to do that with a product.
It is amazing, to be honest. I mean, because Scotland's about half the size of Texas approximately, and then you give us 130 plus distilleries, something like that.
We're tiny. Population of London's bigger than the population of Scotland.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
cool.
It's a tiny little place. But again, Scotch whiskey now holds up against champagnes and Rolexes and Ferraris, and
I would agree.
And it's crazy that, again, what was a poor man's drink. There's lots of history to get there. So
for sure.
I love the history. I am a big history buff, but I love the production as well. I love the products. So again,
you're in the right place. We love all the same things.
Yeah.
So
to tie everything together, that was a big way of saying it's really nice to work for a family-owned company.
That's awesome.
Because I got into it through family. and Angus Dundee, we have two wonderful distilleries and our
Absolutely.
family lines.
Yeah, same way I got him. My grandfather's, both of them. Whiskey is very important to the family, so here we are. We built a castle around it.
Yep.
All right, so let's get a little history on Tomintoul, and then we'll jump into drinking some of it.
Sounds good. So, Tomintoul, this was the first distillery that the family purchased.
Okay.
So Angus Dundee Distillers was started back in the 1950s. Originally a blending company. We did sort of blending and bottling and cask sales.
Okay.
Started by a man named Terry Hillman, very, very smart man. Still going. He's in his 90s, but very, very, very good businessman.
That's awesome.
So Terry did all this stuff and he was very successful with it, but he was always kind of pushed by his father to own a distillery. He kind of said on his shoulder, you're never really in the whiskey industry until you have one.
All right.
And in the year 2000, he went up to Speyside and had a look around to see if he could get hold of one. He was actually going up to buy a different distillery across the hill from us called Tomintoul, which was not in production at the time. He found it a little cold. He asked the person showing him around if there was any other distilleries that he could potentially purchase outside of that. And he was basically told no, to be honest. He was told there is nothing else for sale. However, he was like, I've came all the way up. Can I see something? They went, yeah, sure, fine. Just because you came up, we'll show you the other distillery on the other side of the hill, which is Tomintoul. Took 2 steps inside Tomintoul, and he said, I'm buying Tomintoul Distillery. The guy showing him around went, it wasn't for sale. And like, this was literally just a courtesy thing. Like, you can't buy this distillery.
Oh, that's funny.
And Terry said, everything's for sale for the right price. So
exactly.
And he got hold of it. So he got hold of Tomintoul in the year 2000.
That's awesome.
And we've had it ever since. It was a nice, clean changeover. So our master distiller, Robert, which I will talk about later, he came with the distillery. He was there beforehand. He was actually the gentleman who had shown him around both those distilleries when he first went up and visited. And one of the things he said is, I really don't want this new family to step in and for my team to change and for things to change. He was rest assured that no one was going to be let go. The process was going to be as smooth as possible. And he's been with us ever since we've owned this distillery.
That's fantastic.
So, Tomintoul itself. Tomintoul is named after the village of Tomintoul, which is the highest inhabited village in the Highlands in Scotland. So by elevation, it's one of the highest. It's not a very big village.
A few hundred people? Or?
Yeah, a couple hundred, if that.
If that, okay. Yeah. So, not big
pretty
at all.
Small. It's pretty much a single street. If anyone in the chat has ever been to Speyside before, you'll know what I'm talking about. Speyside is a beautiful part of Scotland. It's rolling hills. It's like lush heather and trees and wildlife, and it's malt Disney. It's the whiskey capital in Scotland. There's so many malt distilleries together. It's a crazy place. You can get up in the morning in Speyside. You drive 15 minutes to pick up your bread and milk for breakfast. You pass 10 distilleries. You come back drunk with no milk and bread, and you do that every week. You do that every day.
It sounds rough. Terrible.
It's a beautiful part of the country.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, Tomintoul is a nice little village. Sort of quite quiet, quite quaint, and that's what the distillery is named after. We're just down the road from them.
Awesome.
Local ski resort as well is only 15 minutes away, so you get a lot of snow up that way just because of the elevation.
Okay, that's cool.
There was about 5 or 6 different sites that were looked at until Tomintoul was settled. So this distillery was started back in 1965. Okay. So it turns 60 years old next year.
Okay, so it's a newer, relatively
exactly.
speaking.
It's new. It is new in Scotch whiskey terms, which is weird, even though it turns 60 next year. But there was a few different sites that were sort of looked at before they settled on where they did, and they settled on it because of the Ballantrae Spring. So that is our water source. It's just to the west of our distillery. A lot of people talk about water a lot when it comes to whiskey, and it is vitally important. You want nice, clean water.
Absolutely.
Luckily, we get that up in Tomintoul and at the Ballantrae Spring. But alongside clean water, the other thing that people don't talk about is water consistency. You need that water to not dry up in the summer.
Good point.
You need it not to be freezing over in the winter. You want it not to be siphoned away by other means, be that farming or other distilleries. And you also need to make sure that water source is going to last 60, 100, 150, 200, 200 plus years.
Very important.
Yeah. So getting that water source correct is incredibly important. And the Ballantrae Spring is very, very important for us. We actually do, and again, I will talk about this later, we do both peated and unpeated whiskey at this distillery, and our fully peated spirit is known as Ballantrae. So we name our peated run after the water source.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
and is your water slightly peated too, or is it completely?
You'll have elements of peat in there.
Okay.
So up in Aberdeenshire, there is a lot of peat.
Okay.
I know today, when it comes to the whiskey regions, Speyside's often seen as that fruitier area compared to the west of Scotland. But there's a lot of natural peat up in Speyside. If you went back to the early 1900s, a lot of your classic Speysides would have had a little bit of smoke in there. Aberdeenshire is a good peat region. So the main ones would be Aberdeenshire, which is up near Speyside. You got a ton up in Orkney. Of course, you've got a lot on the west coast as well. But like Islay and stuff. So there's a few different ones around Scotland for peat, but Speyside has good reserves. So we are using local peat when we do decide to do that.
Very cool.
Over time. So yeah, started in the 1960s, named after Tomintoul village. The other main thing to say as well is that we are in the Speyside Glenlivet Valley. So the Glenlivet estate is a part of Speyside, which has been synonymous for whiskey production for well over 100 years. I'm sure many, if not everyone on this call has heard of Glenlivet whiskey before.
I would imagine so. If not, they're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah. I know. So we have Speyside Glenlivet on the front of our tubes, and we often have consumers assume we have some association with
not realizing
that
it's
distillery.
a region.
We don't. It's our location. Glen just means valley in Scottish, and Livet is the river Livet that runs through that valley. So Glenlivet is the valley of the river Livet. The same way Glenfiddich is valley of the deer, Glenmorangie is valley of tranquility, etc. So we're in that valley, and the Glenlivet Valley had been known for making exceptional whiskey for a very long time.
For sure.
One of our kings, King George, he was known for loving the whiskey that came out of Glenlivet. So there was actually a lot of distilleries across Scotland in the Speyside area that would name themselves Glenlivet, and then they're like Abelard, for instance, has Glenlivet still in the front of their distillery, but they're nowhere near the Glenlivet area. So today you can only have that on your box or your tube if you're actually in the Glenlivet estate, which is where we are today. So yeah, if you see Glenlivet on the front of Tomintoul, we have no association with the Pernod Ricard owned bigger distillery next door to us, the big boy next door.
Right.
But we are in the same area as the one next door. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
We're right next to each other, Charles. Stop whining. He's literally like 6 inches away, guys.
Do you want me to move forward? I can do if you want to.
If it'll make you feel better, Charles. Does that make you feel better? It's not like I'm making him leave. All right.
Right. So do you want to have a whiskey?
Absolutely. We should definitely have a whiskey.
There you go.
All right. So how do you pronounce this word that's in Gaelic that I cannot pronounce?
Absolutely. So that's the tala. Think of it like tala. It's probably the easiest way to do it.
All right.
We do state on the front of all our bottles our pronunciations of things. So that's right on the front of the tube here.
Oh,
and then Tomintoul's pronunciation will be on the back of the tube.
Nice.
As well.
All right. Look, they helped us as Americans.
Yeah, it just means gentle. So this is an entry-level core release for us. It's designed. Yes, please. It's designed to be nice, soft, approachable, and easy drinking. I think this is a good time to really talk about a little bit about our production because
absolutely.
Tomintoul's setup in our production leads it into having quite a soft spirit, which is what most of our releases are sort of structured around. They are designed to be nice, sort of approachable kind of styles of Scotch whiskey. We have a classic sort of honey and nutty character to our whiskey.
That's
the sort of DNA. It has like a honey nutty, almost like sugared sort of salt, sugared barley, like sweet barley.
It's like a granola bar.
Yeah, exactly, like a granola bar.
You guys get those Nutrigrain Valley bars over there?
Yes, yeah.
It's like that's what it reminds me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I can't remember which ones you poured in. There we go. So yeah, that sort of malty sweet, almost a little bit of citrus, but honey on top is kind of classic Tomintoul. And as I said, that is coming from our setup, from our production. So this distillery was started in the 1960s, and when it was put in, a lot of the equipment that was put in back in the 60s was quite big for the time frame, at least. In scale. Today, not so much, but back then it's pretty big. And the main thing in the production cycle for Tomintoul would be in the still room. So we have some of the tallest stills in all of Scotland. It's Tomintoul.
How tall are they?
They're about 23 feet tall.
Okay.
So they are very, very big. So Glenmorangie have the tallest. They don't shut up about how tall their stills are. It's all over their marketing. They make good whiskey. They have very tall stills.
Yes, they do.
And ours are very big as well. And as I keep telling my wife, it's not all about size, but We do have very big stills at this distillery. For anyone unaware, if you make your whiskey still taller and bigger, it tends to allow lighter alcohol chains to make it out, and heavier ones have a little bit harder time. They need a bit more energy and they fall back down. Effectively, it increases your copper contact or your reflux rate.
Right.
And coppers draw out sulfites. So if you make your stills taller, you tend to have a lighter base characteristic. There are a lot of other factors in there that can also affect that, but the shape and style of your still is incredibly important to your end DNA of your whiskey.
Absolutely.
I was at the Scotch Whisky Research Institute last year. Really cool place. They do a lot of science stuff for the whiskey industry to like try out new yeast strains, maybe play around with different maturation techniques, stuff like that.
Sure.
So they can do it on smaller scales, and then the bigger companies can see what happened and then decide if they want to scale it.
Makes sense.
Anyway, I was there, and I was in a room with a lot of distillers and brewers, blenders as well. I was kind of out of my place, to be honest. But they gave us two whiskeys in two different glasses, so next to each other, and they basically just said, what do you think the differences are between these two? And we tried them both. Everyone around the room tried these two whiskeys. And first one, clearly young, but pretty standard. It was quite nice. Citrusy, bright, fresh, sort of classic straight bourbon cask, maybe 3-4 years old.
Okay.
Second one was awful. It was like
Okay, that's nice.
I was like off cabbage. It was like a compost bin.
Does not sound good at all.
No, it was very green, but not in a good way. And they asked us what they thought the differences were between these two whiskeys.
Okay.
And there was lots of different sort of thought processes. Some people were like, did you ferment it for like a really long time? Or like incredibly long or really short? Maybe you did use a new yeast strain that's like really strange.
Yeah.
Did you put it in an odd cask type? Maybe it wasn't oak. Obviously, we have to use oak in Scotland. But is this like showcasing what other wood types can do? And no, the answer was that those two spirits were identical, but one had been placed through a miniature copper pot still, and the other one had been put through an identical stainless steel still.
Ooh.
So it was the exact same shape, but the steel had drawn out none of the sulfites.
Yeah, no, that sounds horrible.
And so that's where all the green notes were coming. So
that'll do it if you're not using copper, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we have to use copper by law for multiple reasons. It's malleable, it's a great heat conductor, and it helps with flavor as well. So we have really big stills, and it tends to give us a very light, easy drinking spirit. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that, the bigger the still, the better. If I want a heavier spirit, you want that still smaller, because you want to get those heavier alcohols going through. It'll give you a bit more of a weightiness to it, a bit more of a, sort of chewy meatiness to it as well. If I want a heavier kind of style, make it smaller, use worm tub condensers, which use less.
Yeah, because that was the question we got, was you guys using shell and tube or worm tub condensers?
Yeah, we're using shell and tube, because again, that sort of plays off those tall stills. It
makes
helps
total sense.
With the lighter, because shell and tube, you're getting more copper contact again over worm tub.
Right.
So again, the reason worm tub tends to give you these heavier notes is because you actually have less copper contact. But yeah, Tomintoul, its DNA and its base characteristic is light, fresh. Again, kind of that sort of sweet barley thing we talked about, that sort of honey nut kind of characteristic.
Absolutely.
But smooth across the board is what we tend to go for most of our releases.
We go with delicious. I think that's a solid choice too.
Yeah.
It's quite nice.
Indeed. So
now, how old approximately is this one?
So this is the entry level again. This one's around 6 to 8 years old.
Okay. That's nice.
It's fully bourbon cask matured. It'll be a combination of first and second fill to an extent. We get all our bourbon casks through a brokerage. So
so it's just whoever's available. Yeah.
Yeah. So our kind of, yes, but we'll fly our master distiller Robert and our owner Tanya across to Kentucky.
Oh, nice.
And then they'll hand choose them. So you'll see Woodford Reserve, Heaven Hill.
That's
whatever.
cool.
Yeah. So it's.
So you only use really a handful of specific distilleries when you guys are using the ex-bourbon?
It can change. It just depends what they find when they're across there. So I wouldn't say it's a consistent. We only work with these guys. It just
it's just what's available, what's going to taste good with you guys.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's how it works.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Yeah. So again, our production is the scale of it for its time frame was quite big. Big stills, pretty big mash tun. It's about 12.5 ton mash tun, semi-lighter. Fermentation around 60 hours of 6 fermentation vessels. But the main thing to talk about alongside that with production is we're incredibly manual. So even though it's it was quite new tech at the time in the 60s.
Sure.
We're exceptionally manual compared to many of the distilleries around us today. So most distilleries today in Speyside, across Scotland, at least for our size, use what's known as a semi-automated system, whereby you sit in front of a computer screen, kind of like this, and a very, very smart system effectively helps make the whiskey for you. Don't get me wrong, you still have highly trained operators on site. But you can come in the morning, you can see the barley come in on your computer, you can see your ABV levels on the computer, you can move it from fermentation across to distillation on the computer. Cool. You don't have to get up unless you want to double check or there's anything that's popping up. And, it's very, very good at what it does. Again, the people that work there are still highly trained and could make whiskey by hand, but the system allows you to have smaller teams for bigger distilleries.
Sure.
And also it helps with consistency and things like that.
Plus you can do it from home, right?
You could if you needed to, yeah. But we're exceptionally manual. If you don't get up out of the control booth and open something with a wrench, then the place will explode.
Yeah, you should do that. That sounds bad.
Yeah, so it's how it how it used to be done. It's still very much done by hand. We've had a lot of people learn their craft at Tomintoul, move to some of these bigger distilleries, and actually come back because they've got bored of sitting in a chair.
You can only push go
when they're
it's not so fun.
Yeah, because they've been used to having to get up and manually look at the the temperature gauges and check for things like putting the pole and see how much is there and everything being done by hand. And next thing you know, you're sitting in front of a laptop for 6 hours.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. Yes, it's technically distilling, but it's not fun distilling. Like you said, much more fun to do by hand. More work, obviously, but you get what you want. I guess you get what you're going for at that point. So it makes sense.
So that was a process that we thought about going into the semi-automated system. But our owner Terry decided to increase our production instead of going to that system, just hire more people.
I like this plan.
Yeah, so we just hired more people. So we do run 24/7, but we just hired more people from.
You run in 7 days a week too?
Correct.
Yeah. Wow, so you guys are running all the time.
We are at maximum output.
How many? Is it just 2 stills you guys are? Or you get 4 stills? Okay.
4 stills.
All the same size or different sizes on the wash and the spirit?
They're actually pretty much the same size, which is actually quite unusual. Most times,
usually one's small and
one's smaller, one's bigger. Ours are pretty much the same size right across the board.
Cool.
Which has its own issues, but it is pretty much the same size across the board. And we have a night shift and a day shift as well. So you have to hire more people to be manual. So it actually costs you more in the long run.
True. Labor's not expensive.
It is expensive, but the benefit is
better whiskey.
You're keeping hold of how whiskey was done in the valley.
Yeah, absolutely, which is very cool.
Which a lot of people are moving away from today.
Yes, I prefer this style personally, but hey, lots of good ones out there. But you can like whatever you like. That's the best thing about whiskey.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is great. What's the price point on this? Like $40, $50, something like that.
40, I think. 40. I will admit right now, I don't know the prices of everything because
it's also local.
Yes,
you're also
it's normally our local reps that will help me with the pricing. I've been left alone today here, so I know how to talk about the products, but I'm all over the place and I don't remember the price of everything in every market. So if anyone needs pricing, we can absolutely get it to you. But I can't promise I'll know the price of every bottle.
The good news is for you guys who are coming tonight, our buddy Andy, who was Tarrant Liquor, we'll have prices for you on these products. So if you do want to order them, we'll take care of that, no problem.
Good stuff.
All right, you want to move on to the next one there?
Yes, sir. So we'll move on to the first age statement, which would be the 10-year-old.
Okay.
So this one is going to take most of the characteristics that you just tried in the Tla, but obviously it's a little bit older, so you get a little bit more of a orchard fruit kind of note come through in this one, but it's still got the classic DNA of Tomintoul, which again is that kind of honey nut characteristic, and that is seen across the board with Tomintoul.
So I had our buddy Chris Trevino, who's going to be here later. That's also Liquor Hound, who's a old school, awesome YouTuber.
Cool.
All right. Now, would you like
I'll keep up because when I'm talking, I end up not drinking, so I'll finish this one. So don't worry. I am going to catch up with everything. It's all
good. We have all night. It's all fine. All right.
So the 10. The 10-year-old for me, our 16-year-old is often seen as like the flagship, and I'll talk about the 16 when we get there. But The 10 for me is one that has a bit of emotional value, because this is one that was always on my granddad's shelf. So again, I got into whiskey through my granddad. He wasn't a rich man, so he wasn't buying whiskeys that were much older than 10 years old.
Okay.
And when he was buying those whiskeys, every 10-year-olds were pretty cheap back then. So you could get hold of it for a good price. But he used to always have a bottle of Tomintoul 10 on the shelf. And the reason for it was, it was nice, it was approachable, it was a good price point, it was an easy drinker. He used to chuck it in a big, heavy tumbler, because the heavier the glass you have, the more powerful you feel. It's a direct correlation. So he'd put it in a big, heavy glass.
There you go.
He'd sit down, he'd have all the grandkids round on a weekend.
Awesome.
He'd turn on his favourite soccer team and watch them lose every weekend.
Oh, jeez.
That's
what you need the Scotch for.
That's why you need the Scotch for, yeah. But
yeah,
so he loved the Tomintoul. There would always be a Tomintoul 10. Cool. They'd have something a bit heavier, so you'd always have like a Talisker 10 as well up there.
Okay. That's a good one too.
So this one does have an emotional connection to me. But it's just, again, it's a bright, easy drinker.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons I love Scotch so much is the diversity of flavors is ridiculous. You can go from, citrus and floral and perfumed. You can jump into heavier, richer styles if you do a heavier cask type. You can go into obviously the smoky stuff, and then you can balance everything in between as well. So there's so much diversity in flavor with Scotch. But sometimes, see, if I just want I've had a hard day at work, it's been a long one, and I just want to sit and relax. It's something like Tomintoul 10 that I'll often have in the glass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's not going to break the bank, same as the first one, but it's just nice and approachable. It's a whiskey I can pour and just sit down and enjoy myself. Absolutely. And that's the reason I like it so much.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it's a good one to have, like you said, on a regular day. It's great. And you're drinking Scotch too, which I appreciate, because sometimes you get a little bit too light. This lets you know ahead of time, this is lots of malt and beautiful Scotch. It's just really, really good.
Yeah.
It's just, it's interesting because I'm glad you guys have basically the full lineup here in the States now, but for a long time, it was like, oh, where'd you find this Tomintoul? And now it's great that you guys are all the support and all this stuff now, which is really fantastic. So
yeah, I mean, our range is actually very big.
It's quite large. Yeah,
it's actually dramatically big. Being a family-owned company, again, I absolutely adore working for a family-owned company, but one thing is we don't like to get rid of stuff. As long as one person likes it,
with that.
It seems to stay in our range. So I'll start a whiskey fair or festival. I've got 2 bottles in front of me, and next year I've got 80 bottles in front of me.
Yeah, I bet.
It's like every new release just adds to it. But that's part of the fun as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because again, going back to that sort of flavor triangle I talked about, like Tomintoul can do these lighter, fresher stuff, but it can also do the smoke. So which is I appreciate. You can bring that all together. You can do heavier Tomintouls on top of the lighter stuff. And again, that's what makes whiskey so much fun.
Absolutely.
For me, whiskey should be the kind of drink that you drink with other people and it brings you together. Same way my granddad would have it when the grandkids are around, the same way that we're sharing a whiskey here. Exactly. You've got people, I'm sure, having a whiskey back home. Yep. It's a drink that can bring people together. And I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about YouTube is we got some guys here in Texas, some people are in Australia, some are in Canada that are watching us now, California, and other states. And it's just great to get to share this with them and their experiences and drink at the same time. And this way you're not drinking alone, no matter what. You've got friends to drink it with. And now you guys' canisters are beautiful. That's one of the things I really love about Scotch in general is really beautiful canisters. So now is this your water source that's on?
So it's actually, I'm glad you pointed it out. So when we first went to design that, we weren't actually designing that. We went to a lot of sort of, what are they called? Who are the people that design products or packaging for you? What are they called? It's not an architect. It's like a design agency. I can't remember the word I'm looking for. But anyway, Terry didn't like what they were giving him, these design agencies he was going to. So they were paying a lot of money. They're giving him all these designs.
Sure,
and he didn't quite like
he
it.
Wants, yeah.
So instead, he painted that. So that's a painting that Terry, our founder, painted. And that's why it's on all our bottles. So
it's a hell of a painter. That's really cool.
Absolutely. So Terry very much is the head of the family. It's his son and daughter that run our company properly now.
Okay.
But he painted that. So again, that's the little tie into
that's really cool
into family that you see on the front of our bottles.
Okay. Now the purple does that signify anything, or he wanted to use a purple sky?
No. Purple signifies the heather.
Okay, I figured. Okay, that was the next one. I figured it was probably heather.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of heather around the distilleries. For anyone who doesn't know, heather's like a little purple flower.
Yes.
It's brown for most of the year, and it flowers mainly in August, September, end of
That
summer.
part I didn't know.
Yeah, and then it flowers into bright purple. But so your hills in Scotland up in Speyside are very rounded and have very few trees. They're sort of really soft, rounded hills. The hills themselves are exceptionally old, really, really old.
Sure.
You know, if you went back millions of years, those hills would have been practically the size of Everest. But there's been so much weathering over the millions and millions of years that they've softened and softened and softened. You've got all these glacial impacts as well that, again, carved everything down and softened everything down. So you have these sort of soft, rounded hills that are coated in heather, which, again, is kind of like a little... It's not a very tall plant. It's kind of like brush kind of plant that sits on top. But yeah, traditionally, or for most of the year, it's a brown color. But then it blooms in bright purple August, September time. And we have that on our branding because it's all around us in the valley that we're in.
So when it blooms, is it about the color of like lavender, essentially? That color
lavender is a good description. It can be a little deeper than lavender at times. But to think of it as lavender is a pretty good way of describing the color. Yeah. Again, it can often be a deeper purple. But it kind of varies. But yeah, sometimes it is a little bit on the lighter lavender side as well.
Well, it's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make a blend.
Yeah, no problem.
We have lots of these to
Still
try.
a single malt, sir. That's 2 single malts in one glass. So.
That's right.
Yeah, it'd only be a blend if we put in some Glencadam.
That's a good point.
So, moving on, the 12. So this is one of our cask finish ranges. So we do a lot of cask experimentation at the distillery. Most of the available products in the US currently are ex-bourbon cask releases. But within the distillery, like back in Scotland, so if you're ever over in Scotland, we do a lot of other cask types. We do lots of different wines: Tempranillo, Rioja, Pinot Noir, Merlot. We've done white ports, tawny ports, ruby ports, PX.
Wow. You guys got even way more cool stuff.
We've got a lot. It's just not all available in the US yet.
Right.
But let's see in the next few years if more people start drinking Tomintoul, we'll get some of these limited editions in.
It's a good idea. I like that plan.
We need, if everyone on this call drinks more Tomintoul, then we'll get some of these other cask types.
It's a great idea.
So the Oloroso is one that's been around for one of the longer of these limited releases. Starts its life in bourbon and then it's moved to Oloroso for the last 2.5 years of its life.
Okay.
So it'll take that classic, again, sort of honey nutty character and then add in a little bit more dried fruits. You get a little bit more of that sort of wood spice come through as well. It's got a real sweetness to it as well, but a little bit more weight. But then on top of everything that we just talked about, it keeps the classic DNA of Tomintoul being nice and soft and approachable.
Now you say Oloroso. Do you know what house it's coming from? From the Oloroso with Sherry Bodega?
It depends. So we do move around. We've used Miguel Martin in the past. We've used Fernando di Castilla in the past as well. We've used a few. So with the Oloroso casks, it depends. At the moment, our master blender Ian, he goes across to Spain and decides what he's going to be doing.
Yeah, because it's really a unique nose on this for the sherry. Because a lot of times you get, it's not as sweet as a lot of people's other roasts, which is nice that it's
so
more punch to it.
Absolutely. The thing with Tomintoul, and it's the same with Glencadam, so we'll talk about that later, is you can get different styles of whiskey in Scotland. You can get ones that are cask driven, which is absolutely fine. There's some beautiful cask driven whiskies. And you can get ones that are more spirit driven. So we tend to gravitate on a spirit driven side of things.
Okay, makes
sense. Where
you
kind of want to keep that spirit DNA from the first whiskey you try all the way up to 25.
Sure, makes total sense.
And any cask finish like this that you do in between often is taking that base spirit character and then adding a cask finish at the end to add in elements of flavor. Whereas other distilleries have a lot of cask driven flavor, so they'll make sure the cask impact is bigger. Again, I have no issues with either. They're both beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
But from our company, for both, we tend to gravitate
sure.
towards a spirit-driven character with any kind of cask finish to add layers on top of what is already there, which should be coming through in the 12. The 12 is also a limited edition. So once this one,
limited. Okay,
it's limited, but we come out with other batches of the 12.
Okay.
So each, it's not a single malt in the sense that each will be the same.
Okay, it's just a different finish, generally the 12 each year.
So this 12 might be different from a 12 that someone else on the call might have, depending on which version of the 12.
Okay, because was there a port one at one point in time?
We have done a port one, but that's a US
was.
exclusive.
Okay.
12-year-old. That's moved to an 18 now. Nice. So the 12 is no longer in production. So if you see the port 12 on the shelves, that won't be replaced. It's because it's being moved up to an 18-year-old.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be really rough to have to drink an 18-year-old port finish. That'll be terrible.
It's not that
yeah,
bad.
but it's not.
But yeah, so but the 12 Oloroso again is a limited release that between depending on which release you have, it will vary.
Most of it, Chris. There's a couple. So Lil would like most of these, Chris. There's a couple that are peated, but we're not doing those till later. Yeah. So, but the rest I think should be a fan of.
Yeah, absolutely. The peated stuff is a very small amount of our output. It's about 3 weeks in the summer and 3 in the winter. Again,
wow! So it's really small. Okay.
Yeah, and that's only reasonably recently moved to 3 and 3. It used to be less. It was 2 and 2. It was only a week at one point. So it's only 3 weeks and 3 weeks. We do it for 3 in the summer and 3 in the winter because we have a silent season at that point anyway.
Sure.
So just before you would naturally clean your whole system and check everything's working, you usually swap to your peated barley. That way you can just cleanly go straight back onto unpeated barley afterwards. Otherwise, you'd have to flush the system in between, and it just becomes
makes total sense. Yeah. Let's do that.
Also, for the peated stuff, 3 and 3 is our maximum output of peat because we can't cut into the unpeated stock.
Sure, makes total sense. Yeah.
So very cool. 3 and 3 is the absolute maximum we can do of peated stock at Tomintoul.
Okay.
And
very cool.
It was less, and it's went up to that.
So
small amounts.
Makes sense.
So another cask finish. I actually meant to grab this one earlier. I forgot it was there. This is the rum cask. This one is absolutely available. This one, as much like the 12, starts its life in bourbon, but this time is finished for about 2.5 years in Caribbean rum cask from the Dominican Republic.
Very nice.
So this one is a lot more citric. It's more citrusy. It's a little bit sort of yellow stone fruits. Much fresher than something like the 12, which has a little bit more density to it. But this one is a sort of zippy, fresh, sweet style of Tomintoul. Beautiful, kind of like sunny weather style of Tomintoul.
Now, this is the newest thing on the market for you guys, right?
In this market?
In this market, okay.
Yes, probably. Yeah. So this, again, is going to be a little bit fresher and lighter. As I said, quite a nice sort of sunny weather style of Tomintoul, which means in Scotland I only get to drink it for about 3 days a year. But over here, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. Here, especially here in Texas, you're gonna get a lot of sun. Now, is this the first time you guys have done a rum finish, or have you guys done one prior?
I believe this is the first one that's properly available from Tomintoul. We do have quite a few casks of the actual Dominican rum in our warehouse.
Are you allowed to say which?
I am not.
I would have. I was like, I figured you probably weren't, but I'll ask anyway. The worst you can tell me is no.
There's not many rum distilleries in the Dominican Republic, and the one we have uses pot stills, so you can try and figure out what that one is. But I can't tell you, so I'm not going to. I'm not going to get fired from this.
Let's not get you fired. So we'll go with it's from the Dominican. Good enough for me.
Yeah,
you can figure it out. Good for you.
Yeah. So. Yes, we actually have a lot of the casks of the rum itself in the warehouse. We have the rum down in PX cask, Oloroso cask, ex-bourbon cask, so our whiskey cask, and our ex-peated cask as well. But because we have that rum down and stuff, it means that we're now going to get these rum casks once that is empty. So it wouldn't shock me to see more rum releases in the future. Now, I have no control over what we do with our cask management policy. Right. That's the master blender's job.
Yeah. That's very cool.
But again, it wouldn't shock me if somewhere down the line you see.
So are you then taking that rum and sending it back? Or are you guys just dumping it and doing something special that you can't talk about right now?
We have a rum brand that we kind of semi-launched. Again, it was rum that was aged in whiskey casks.
Right.
Which we did it during COVID, and
okay.
So it kind of got put on the back shelf a little bit.
Sure.
So I don't know where that's moving at the moment because it kind of was going to happen, and COVID happened, and everything went to crap, and now we're bringing it back up again. But we still have these casks. So what we normally do, and again, so this could happen, but I don't know this for certain. But what we normally do, any of our small batch releases like this, it's a non-age statement. So again, this one will be a good price point to get in.
Sure.
We nearly always do a non-age statement, and then we'll do a limited edition age statement version.
That'll be cool. Yeah, for sure.
Normally, all the age statement ones are 46% non-chill filtered natural color. Their age statement and their will be higher in price, but they're cast type. So if you see in the market that we've done rum cask, expect there down the line to be an age statement rum cask.
I like this blend. That's a good choice.
That's how it normally works on both our ranges.
How long? Usually a few years after the launch of like with small batch like this,
just
or it's just kind of
ready.
When it's ready.
Yeah.
Kind of
so that's again down to the master blender Ian. So he'll be checking the casks. If he thinks it needs longer, he'll give it longer.
Sure.
If it's ready, it'll good to go. We don't really have a time frame. We often have some strange numbers in our range. So we've done like a 14 or 17, or we've done 13-year-olds for Glencadam. These are age statements you don't see too often.
Yeah.
So it just tends to be whenever it's good to go. That's
he has a key. It's always he's able to get. Otherwise,
he's allowed in.
Yeah, he has no business.
That's all good.
Yeah, they're gonna look around real quick while we keep talking. So
yeah, no problem. Good. So we should probably move on to 60.
Yep, let's do that. All right.
So the 16-year-old, this is a great opportunity to start talking about Robert. So I've talked a little bit about Ian, our master blender, but Robert really is he's the main man. I wouldn't say that to Ian, or he'll kick me under the shelf, but Robert's the main man. So Robert's our master distiller. He is our master distiller. He is our master distiller for both distilleries.
Okay.
And he is a 4th-generation distiller in the Glenlivet Valley. So his father, his grandfather, and his grandfather's father have all been making whiskey in the Speyside Glenlivet Valley for over 100 years. Again, he was the one that came with the distillery and has been with us the whole time. He's been with us for over 30 years. He's been in whiskey for over 50 years.
Wow.
And this is the one that he would have before he goes to bed at night. This is his.
Now, did he create the 16-year-old?
Back in the day, yes. So
originally,
this is his favorite in the range. Is the 16. He just likes the way everything comes together in the 16. Cool. It really comes off almost like flapjacky. Again, that sort of sweet, nutty honeyedness that comes through. In this
now,
one.
Is this just ex-bourbon as well?
This one is ex-bourbon.
Okay.
Now, the reason I asked him recently, you've been in the industry over 50 years, and I've said, what's the biggest change that you've seen in Scotch whiskey in those 50 years? And he gave a really interesting answer, and that was when he started, everyone only had one release. You wanted a Macallan, you get a Macallan 10. You wanted Glenlivet, so Glenlivet 12. So when someone says, do you like Glenlivet? You just think of that one release, and it's either a yes.
I didn't realize that.
There wasn't 1,000 different cask types. There wasn't all this. It was like you had one expression. If it's going to be a single malt, it's one expression, maybe two at a push, but one expression coming from each distillery.
That's why.
And the 16 for him reminded him of
what that was like back in the day. That's very cool.
So it's the whiskey that when he thinks Tomintoul, it's that. Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So these days, obviously, everyone has lots and lots of releases.
Yeah, you might have more than one now.
Yeah, you have more than one now. And that's driven by the market. It's driven by user knowledge, really.
Yeah.
From the 2000s onwards, Scotch whiskies went up and down in popularity throughout history. We had big crashes in the early 1900s, known as the Patterson crash.
Yes.
Obviously, it was shaky over the wars, as you'd expect.
Right.
Then it came back a little bit, and then the 1980s and 90s were terrible for Scotch whiskey.
That was not good.
Often known as the whiskey loch. You could fill a loch or lake with our whiskey, no one would buy it. It's effectively overproduction and quality slipping a bit.
Crazy.
But then from 2000 onwards, we've had a very good time. And the reason for that is the internet. So it means that people are more informed in Scotch than they ever have been. Mm-hmm. The opportunity to go to a good whiskey bar like this and talk to people that know stuff about whiskey, tune into something like this and hear, stuff from the distilleries, read whiskey books, the accessibility of things like YouTube and all this kind of stuff. That was never there. And so the consumer has never been more knowledgeable than before. Yeah, and the more knowledgeable the consumer gets, the more they want to try other things, and the bigger the ranges end up.
It's funny you mention that because I like to collect all whiskey books. I don't know who that would be. Hey, Eric, can you check who that is? It might be Ben and Jeff. If it is, let them in and tell them to be quiet. Anyway, so I used to collect all whiskey books, and so one of the ones I wrote was Michael Jackson, the reviewer.
Yeah.
I have a 1988 version of his book, and so it was really cool. So I go around and collect old distilleries from his book, but I never even thought about that point that you can't. There was no internet. There was no other way to really learn it except for a book, or you happen to go to that distillery, which that is a really great point.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have for us now, so thank God for the internet, right? And lots of really cool whiskey flavors.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so the 16 has kind of became our sort of standard core expression, but that's mainly driven around Robert,
Now, why purple again on the 16 and at the 10 as
Same
well?
thing. It's just to do with the heather and the.
Okay, so but why on both purple? Was there a reason for that?
At the time, it would have been consistency just
Okay.
around the brands.
Okay.
Marketing is something that's kind of a little bit new to us in a sense.
Okay.
As in, don't get me wrong, we've been marketing before.
Sure.
If any of my marketing team's listening to this, please don't shoot me when I get back. We're doing a very good job. So marketing, though, we're constantly working on it. We're constantly updating, you know. So we're always trying to make things a little bit better, as you do with any kind of marketing and in any kind of product as well. So I think back then it was about consistency, and that's what we're running with now. There's potential maybe in the future that you'll see things change.
Sure.
So we do change the colors on some of our
I noticed
releases,
on the other ones,
and that helps them differentiate them
on
on the shelf.
On the market,
but that would have been a consensus.
Absolutely.
To do that, to try and make it a little bit easier.
Don't worry, Donner Pass. We didn't forget it. We purposely did the rest. There were 40. We saved it for you. It's all good. We're going to get to the 14. I promise.
Yeah.
In fact, we're going to it right now.
There you go.
Do you want whiskey now?
Yes, I'll have whiskey.
I was like, I think you want whiskey by now.
I do.
So mine's just making a beautiful collection of single malts in there.
So 14. 14, what we wanted to do is to show Tomintoul with a little bit more of a bite to it. So again, classic Tomintoul is designed to be soft and approachable and easy drinking. But you know, you can make it a little bit stronger if we want to. So bring the ABV up slightly with this one. I think the cask selection is a little bit more spicy as well.
Okay.
So it's still straight bourbon.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites. Let's just say the bottle that I got last time Todd was here might be a quarter gone by this point because I might like it a lot. Yeah. So, which means you have to come down here and take a class at the castle so you can learn about the 14 because it somehow just keeps disappearing. I don't know what happens.
Yeah, it's a cracking whiskey.
Yeah,
so you get a little bit more.
Delicious.
It's got that look like a sweet citric spice on the back, but it's still got that light freshness to it as well.
Yeah, it's got. Do you guys get the Nico candy wafers over there in Scotland?
Not sure.
So there's these. I mean, in America, as we get them, there's little wafers about like this thin, and they're kind of like candy sugar coated. But that's what this reminds me of the nose. Is that particular candy? Yeah, it's got a little licorice on it too, which is
definitely.
Oh, it smells so freaking good.
Yeah, the 14 is very good. Sort of fresh and creamy. It's got a little bit more of a texture to it on the palate as well. Yeah, it's got a nice finish on it. Yeah. So again, this is just the showcase Tomintoul with a little bit more of a spice and a little bit more of a weight.
That's good.
Again, it's not in market, but our fully peated stuff, Ballantrae, that's bottled at 50%.
Yeah,
so that stuff's even stronger.
So that's not in the US. Not
stuff? To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
It's available in other markets, so if you're ever elsewhere,
that is something I would like to try. That sounds great.
55 parts per million using local space IP, bottled at 50%.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get a hold of some of that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we have a non-age statement at 10 and a 15, but that range will be expanding as well.
Okay, will that eventually come to the US?
I would like to think so, but I have no control.
Or at the very least, I can order from the UK.
Yeah, I don't have any control of what goes where, but
right.
But yeah, I would like to think so because for
the orders from UK. Okay,
if there's like engaged whiskey consumers, which obviously people in this kind of call would be,
we are very much
it's really good. It's really interesting stuff.
This is definitely the whiskey nerd hangout for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a whiskey nerd as well, guys.
So you're in the right place.
We're in the right place.
It's going to be whiskey nerd all night long.
Good stuff.
It'd be a really rough thing to have to. Yeah, this is freaking excellent though. Yeah, if you only find the 14, they're all excellent, but the 14 is spectacular.
14 is good. Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you need really. I just suggest picking up the entire range. That's my first suggestion for you. That way you can try them all. But I
paid him a lot of money to say that, so I'm glad he got it in. Which is
okay. Hey, we only bring brands that we really love, so I always thought buy the whole range. That's always have you seen the place? I have a problem with completing collections.
Yeah.
So we have to have the whole range. Very important.
Yeah, but I do love the 14.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah, it's such a nice nose tip. Again, that is mainly driven through the basic DNA of the characteristics, the slightly higher strength, but then also the fact that the bourbon casks that were chosen have a little bit more of spice to them. 'Cause
Yeah.
Every single cask is different.
Right.
You'll have ones that are slightly more honeyed. You'll have some that are slightly more fruity. You'll have some that are slightly more spicy. And we're talking straight bourbon here.
Right. So I wonder if there's probably more rye in those bourbons, is my guess, is where the spice is coming from.
It's all about wood extraction, really. And it can be where it is in the warehouse.
Oh, that's true too.
Minor climate temperatures are going to affect how your vapor and your spirit is interacting with that wood.
Right.
A lot of distilleries have favorite corners of the warehouse that for whatever reason make better whiskey. There's a lot of science in whiskey today, but there's still a lot of myth and magic, which again
absolutely is half the fun. Exactly.
You could put identical spirit off the same run into identical casks from the same bourbon house, stick them next to each other in a distillery and leave them for 10 years and they'll be different. Yeah,
it's crazy how that happens. And at that part, that is the magic part, when they're, like you said, next to each other. It's like, who the hell knows? It just happens, which is wild.
Exactly, and that's kind of the beauty of whiskey in general.
Yes, Chris, you should definitely order them when you order your Irish. Have a Tomintoul put into it with it. The 14 is a good choice.
It is indeed.
You will not be sad. All right,
so
let's move on to that big
bad boy. Do you want to go on the big one?
Yes, this is one I've never had, so I'm really excited to try this one. So this, guys, is the 25, which all I know is this is one I've been waiting to try for a long time. I've never seen a bottle extra before today, so I'm really, really excited about it.
25 is really good.
Holy crap.
Really beautiful.
Right, you guys got to see this.
Really beautiful finish on the 25.
This opens up. This is awesome. Wow, that is beautiful. That's cool. Ooh, and the box smells good too. So even better. Ooh, it's got like a pillow in here for it. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's if you drink too much, you can fall asleep.
There you go. It comes with its own pillow, guys, so you guys can sleep in the box. Okay, that's awesome. I've never seen one like that. That's really cool.
25 is great. Again, the reason I like it is that spirit characteristic sort of just goes right the way through. So again, we're spirit driven, so I still get even elements of what you got in that very first whiskey all the way through in the 25. A lot of distilleries like to, when you move to the high age statements, move to heavier cask types, which is fine. Because a lot of people like old whiskey to taste like a leather armchair, old books, like you're in a dusty room, which I still like that style of whiskey.
Absolutely.
We like, again, to still have our DNA running right the way through. So it doesn't matter if you're buying something that's 10 years old or 30-year-old, you can still get what Tomintoul is, even if, yes, you're still going to get more extraction from the wood come through. And again, I really love the finish on this one. There's a sweet oak. There's a sweet oak note that comes through at the back, which is really, really good.
That's beautiful. Hey, Donald, good to see you there. Also, yeah, I'm sorry, Dean. That's all you get to the Glencadam 10 down there. You should definitely ask your store. You're getting it from. Get them to you the 15 and 21. You'll definitely get it. Glencadam's great. Yeah. I went on a search for that one day at 10. When we talk, I'll tell you some fun stories about Glencadam.
Yeah, I love Glencadam 10. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, it's a great whiskey.
Yeah.
Well, Blair, okay, it's a good choice. Yes. See, Donald, hopefully when you come down from Canada, you get a chance to try all these. Which would be great. All right, let's see what this thing tastes like.
Yeah, so again, for me, the 25, it really comes to life on the palate and on the finish. Like the finish has this sort of warming, sweet oakiness to it. Like a deeper honeyed kind of characteristic, like we've been talking about.
So once again, ex-bourbon?
Yeah. So again, our core range stays in ex-bourbon. That is true for both our ranges. So Glencadam 10, 15, 18, 21, 25, straight bourbon. Tomintoul 10, 14, 16, 18, 21, 25, straight bourbon.
Okay.
But then we play around with cask types in between that.
Okay. That's cool.
And then all limited editions.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. But our core ranges stay straight bourbon.
That's a really good whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah, 25 is pretty good. Again, rich, and again, I just love the warming.
Man, it's just going.
It's the finish.
Still going.
It's the finish that I think's the best part about it. Really, it stays with you. It's the kind of whiskey, you pour a glass, you have a drink, you continue your conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
And then after a couple of seconds, you're like, oh,
yeah, still tastes it. Still here.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Wow.
But we do have a couple of peated ones, but I think we'll leave that to the end.
Yeah, that's fine.
So. Should we start talking about Glencadam?
We can. One quick question is, Chris wants to know, do you know who the Australian distributor is by chance for Tomintoul?
So I haven't been in the Australian market yet. That's why I'm struggling on this. I believe it is quite a big chain. It might even be like a supermarket chain.
Okay.
Possibly. Can I get his contact? And I can.
Yeah, I'll get you. He's a good friend of mine. Yeah, I'll get it for you.
I can get you it by tomorrow.
Perfect.
If I could just,
Chris, we'll get you an answer tomorrow. I'll send you an answer
yeah,
for you.
yeah. Just give me his contact.
Yep.
That goes
get
for
it to you.
anyone else on this call, by the way. If there's any kind of individual questions that don't get answered, by all means, I'll leave my email in the chat or something. You
Perfect.
can just send me an email and I can cover it. So don't worry about it.
Hey there, Mr. Jigs. Good to see you. Yeah, this is special.
Yeah, really good stuff. So I'll talk about Glencadam now.
Yes.
So
let's move on to Glencadam.
as I said, we purchased Tomintoul in the year 2000.
Okay.
Now, a few years later, Terry had just enough money in his pocket to get one other distillery. He bought these distilleries at the perfect time. As I said, 80s and the 90s was not very good for Scotland, and a lot of distilleries were closing in that time frame.
Right.
You had things like your
sadly.
Brewers Go and your Port Ellens Go, which are now coming back. And the only real distillery opening then was Arran in 95. So most distilleries were closing in that time period.
Wow.
So early 2000 was a very good time to buy. You basically bought the dip before that information age
Sure.
we talked about, where everything shot back up again. And he had just enough money to get another distillery, as I said. So he went to Robert, who at this time they worked with him at
Okay,
Tomintoul.
sure.
He said, I've heard there's a little distillery on the eastern coast up for sale called Glencadam. And he said, should I buy it? And Robert said, well, I've got two trains of thought with this one. The first one, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's on the eastern coast. Not too many people stop there. So it's kind of in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. It's not like in a major place like Speyside or Islay or something like that. He said, there's no room for expansion. So he said, this distillery is sandwiched between the local park and the local graveyard. So, you can't be destroying the swings or messing with a different type of spirit. So
that's not a good choice.
So it doesn't matter how good you make this stuff. Like you can't make
don't do
bigger, really. You have
Absolutely.
no other land. And he said also the consumers never heard of it. And so you're in the middle of nowhere. You can't make it bigger. Consumers never heard of it. And so he went, okay, well, maybe I'll look for something else. And before he could even finish that, he was stopped in his tracks by Robert. He said, yes, but that's only one side of the coin. The other side is Glencadam will turn 200 years old in 2025. So at this point, that's next year for us. So you've got the opportunity to buy a distillery with exceptional history and heritage, which does not come up on the market very often. Really. Not really at all. Normally, you'll see a lot of distilleries opening in Scotland today.
There's a lot of new companies, for sure.
They're building new distilleries,
right?
Because it's cheaper to build a new distillery than it is to buy an existing distillery.
Okay, makes sense.
So that's why most people build.
Seems fair.
So he says you've got the opportunity to buy a distillery with lots of history and age.
Okay.
He says the spirit quality, even though people have never heard of it, is exceptional. It is really, really good stuff.
It is.
So the spirit is wonderful. And he said, yes, the consumers never heard of it, but the whiskey industry in Scotland has known about this stuff for a very long time.
Correct.
So Terry was like, well, okay, expand on that last point. What do you mean the whiskey industry has known about it? And it's like, well, Glencadam is quite a unique spirit for the area it's in. It is exceptionally tropical. Our New Mix spirit's like freshly squeezed pineapple juice. You can make a killer pina colada out of the New Mix. So really bright. It's, our New Mix 68.3% alcohol. So it's maybe a one and done cocktail. A couple of them when you're dragged off your seat, but pretty good. So really tropical and bright.
Sounds great.
And so for pretty much its whole existence, a lot of blending companies have been using Glencadam as a top note. It was seen as an A-tier blending whiskey. You can go back to the early 1900s and look at blending logs, and other top-tier blending whiskies were things like Clynelish for like a waxy characteristic, Highland Park for like this sort of heather smoke, Glenlivet as well because it had like a beautiful fruitiness to it, Kalila for like a salinity. So there's certain distilleries that are very hard to replicate in other distilleries, and Glencadam for it where it was one of these distilleries that produced beautiful, bright, fresh kind of whiskey that was very hard to replicate outside of Glencadam. So that meant that it survived through that. It's the last remaining distillery in the Kingdom of Angus. So in its area, which is just up from Dundee, the Kingdom of Angus, there used to be quite a few distilleries. It's the only one that's left.
That's cool.
And it's mainly because it's been sought after,
just
not necessarily by the consumer.
Okay.
So
very cool.
He decided to pick it up. He did, and I'm very glad he did because I love Glencadam. Again, I have a deep emotional connection to Tomintoul through my granddad. I have a deep physical connection to Glencadam through his spirit.
So much.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's really good stuff. So Glencadam, as I said, produces a really bright tropical style in general, and you'll see that across our range. Again, all of the available SKUs in the US tend to be the core range stock that's a little bit brighter, but again, outside of the US, we do heavier styles as well.
There's a lot of stuff I found online for you guys.
We do a lot of stuff outside. So again, maybe in the future, you'll see some of them trickle through the US as well. So as I said, Glencadam produces a bright spirit, and to explain how that occurs before we jump into the first one is much like how the stills are very important to Tomintoul through their height.
Right.
Glencadam stills produce this light spirit through their shape. So Glencadam has quite small stills. You'd actually expect it to have a much denser spirit. But what happens is we have these kind of small copper pot stills, but our line arm, so your line arm is the tube that connects to your condenser. So you have your still, your line arm, and your condenser. Okay. Condenser turns vapors back into liquids. So you've got the vapors coming out, and our line arm at Glencadam goes up quite steeply at 15 degrees. Most distilleries, they're kind of flat, if not down, into your condenser. Ours goes up. And what that means is we have vapors that are recondensing in the line arm. They're supposed to condense in the condenser. They're condensing back into a liquid in the line arm and trickling back into the still again.
Interesting.
And that, again, is increasing copper content.
Sure.
So even though we have quite small stills, and they still give a little bit of sort of weight and texture, they produce a very tropical, bright style. Maybe not as tropical as you'd expect it to be. Less tropical, basically, is what I'm saying. It's also, again, fully manual, all done by hand. Very old setup of stuff there. Our Porteous mill is over 100 years old at Glencadam, still going strong. That's awesome. We also have a Porteous mill at Tomintoul. Do you guys know what Porteous mills are?
I think we should explain that to the people.
So Porteous, if you ever visit Scotland, it's a very distinct mill. Now that sounds quite boring, but they are pretty interesting. So the mill is a very important part to the process. It's where you're getting access to your sugars by grinding things down. Now Porteous were a company from Leeds in England. I know, boo England, but they make good mills. So Porteous were a company in England that made these mills. They're a very iconic red. They actually kind of look almost this color. Oh. So it's like almost this color red. That's cool. So if you go around distilleries in Scotland, you'll see them everywhere. You'll see them in the Highlands. As soon as you go in the mill room, if it's this deep red, you're like, that's a Porteous. But the reason that they all have them is Porteous were excellent at making mills, but so good that they never had to be replaced. And so Porteous went out of business. So the same way now that companies have learned that's not a good way to run. So your laptop will break after 3 years. Your phone runs out of battery. Yeah. So planned obsolescence, I think they call it, where they want things to break. They didn't work that out at Porteous, so it still runs. That's perfectly well. And again, the one at Tomintoul was put in the 60s when it started, still going strong. Glencadam's is over 100 years old, still going strong. That's really cool. Yeah. So old school mill, much smaller mash tun. It's about 5-ton mash tun rake style, which is an older style as well. The company before us, which was Allied Distillers, that's who we bought it off. They replaced the wooden washbacks with stainless steel. However, with Glencadam turning 200 years old next year, we're going to move them back to wood. Awesome. So we're in the process of moving back to wooden washbacks. Very cool. The other main thing in production to mention about Glencadam is Glencadam is the only distillery in Scotland to have an internal water wheel that's running. So you would have had distilleries with water wheels on the outside. Sure. And again, your water wheel would have been your energy source for your mill, etc. Your rotational energy. Yeah. You have to remember, when you're making whiskey in the 1800s, you're making it by candlelight. Right. And also it's the elements. It's fire, water, and earth. Sure. Fire under the stills, water for the water wheel for your rotational energy, and earth being your barley. Fire, water, and earth. That's cool. So we actually have a water wheel inside the still room. That's awesome. So you see the two stills, water wheel runs in the inside of the still room as we have a water source that runs underneath the still room itself. Okay, that's really cool. We're building a visitor center at Glencadam for its anniversary next year. It's never had one in its history. That should be completed by summer next year. Our water wheel, which is already running, it has been, but it's going to be coated in glass, so you'll be able to see the water wheel, see the stills, cool. You'll be able to walk over the top of it. It's going to look amazing. So if anyone is over in Scotland from summer 25 onwards, come and see Glencadam. It's going to look pretty good. It's definitely the list of places to visit sometime for sure. Well, let's drink it. Absolutely. Yes, Donner Pass. That's exactly what we were talking about. That. Hey, say hi to Ben Deeman. Good to see you guys. All right. So this is the origin. This is our entry level into Glencadam's range. You actually probably do have one open
We got it.
somewhere. You can probably just open that
Can we
one.
open that one? Okay.
It's the entry level, so you'll probably get away with it. So this is our entry level, which is the Origins. Now, this is a little bit unusual compared to the rest of the range that's in the US, because this one does contain a little bit of sherry, whereas all the other Glencadam expressions are full bourbon casks, as we talked about, because the other ones are all the core range. There is another one in the US market, which is it's not replacing this one, but it's kind of becoming the new entry level, which is the American Oak. The American Oak, again, goes back to straight bourbon, so it kind of fits in the range a bit better. But this one does contain some sherry. The sherry's, for a non-age statement, it's around 12 years old, so it's actually older stock of sherry that's going in. But this one has a beautiful kind of orchard fruit sweetness. Yes, I will, thank you. Orchard fruit sweetness that comes through in this one. It's quite creamy, and it's quite an easy drinker. Not as citrusy as like the 10-year-old, if you've tried the 10, which we'll try next, but a little bit fruitier and a little bit denser, and that's coming from that Oloroso stock. Oh
yeah, that's the good stuff.
But yeah, Glencadam, really underrated distillery.
Totally agree. I love giving it to people. Like, try this whiskey. You're going to like it. And then it's funny, like, yeah, that's really good. I'm like, what is it? I'm like, what the hell's going on? Trust me, go buy a bottle. You'll enjoy it.
It's a complete hidden gem. There are very few distilleries left in Scotland that are as old as Glencadam, so let's say 200 years old, as good as Glencadam, so they make really good spirit, and nobody's heard of them. Very few have those three things together. But Glencadam does. So
good.
Often when I can do big whiskey events with like properly nerdy whiskey clubs in Scotland, and people have not tried Glencadam.
Really? No, as soon as I learned about them, they existed, I sought them out immediately.
Yeah, you'll be surprised how few people know about this brand. If you're really in the whiskey community, you may have heard of Glencadam because it reviews well and people talk about it. But you've got to remember, people like ourselves are doing calls and stuff like this.
Right, yeah, we talk about this all the time.
We're the
good point.
Vocal minority.
We're a very small amount, exactly.
Yeah. The vast majority of people have never heard of this in their life, and it's something we're trying to change because it's great stuff.
They definitely need to change that.
But you'll be very, very surprised how few people know this brand at all.
We like to put it in the lineup for things that people like. I like Scotch. I'm like, you need to try this one. See if you when you come for a class, try this one. Especially when it's coming tonight. You guys are in for a real freaking treat, because I know a lot of you said, you're like, what is that Scotch? I'm like, trust me, guys. I only have really great things here. You're gonna have an awesome time this evening to try a bunch of really great things for both Tomintoul and Glencadam. So it should be fantastic.
The thing is, like, even when I've been in the US for the last couple of weeks, like Tomintoul really is on the shelves a little bit more, just because by a diverse range that we have from Tomintoul. And when the Glencadams are on the shelf, when I talk to the people in these stores, they say, it doesn't move very quickly because nobody knows what it is. If you get it in their glass, they absolutely love it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
pour some from it. We need people to try it. We need people to try it. We don't have these marketing budgets of these massive companies that can just, throw it in everyone's faces. But you get Glencadam in people's glasses, they'll quickly realize how beautiful the spirit is.
Dean, I guess tell them to order it. See if they'll order you Glencadam. He said that he just called a bunch of liquor stores. They have Tomintoul, but not Glencadam. I would just see if you can get your store to order it for you. I think that's probably the best.
It's not surprising. It's quite common. In the US, this is my first time into the US with the company.
Perfect.
So I'm really learning the market on this trip, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's basically what I've seen everywhere I've been, is that Glencadam is often, if it is there, it's a small amount of the range.
Right.
And even if it's on the shelves, the people in the stores don't know much about
it. They don't know anything about it. So, yeah, I got introduced to it by a buddy who's also a Scotsman who comes here occasionally, and he's like, you need to try this thing called Glencadam. Like, if you recommend it, the answer is obviously yes. And it's like, yeah, you're right. This is one of my absolute favorite distillers of all time. But it's like, okay, the problem is you tell too many people, though, then we'll have a hard time finding it. So, yeah.
I want you to sell as much as humanly possible, sir.
There you go.
I'll be able to get a new Casio watch.
We'll have it. There you go.
Casio watch is only £20, so I don't need to
there you go.
I don't need to sell one bottle and I'll be able to get a new
there
Casio
you go.
watch.
It's perfect.
If one person buys a Glencadam, I can get a new Casio watch.
I think you'll probably have several after this evening. Say hello to Eric Waite there. And of course, Burr Ben over there at Whiskey Crusaders. Go check out those guys' channels as well.
Cool.
All right.
So let's move to the classic Glencadam. So the two pillars of Glencadam are the 10 and the 15. The 10 and the 15 are as I said, the two Roman columns that hold our distillery up.
We can open this one. Here, let me go find the open.
I don't know if we have an open one.
Then I guess we'll open. Oh yeah, we looked for this. You're right. There wasn't
I don't think we have an open one. We can open this.
All right.
So Glencadam 10. That's a great dram. I love Glencadam 10. Like it is beautifully tropical and bright. I often think of it like it's like the Chardonnay of Scotch. It's like a bright white wine. It's bright white wine. It's fresh and it's got creaminess to it, a butteriness and a texture, but it's zippy. It's lively.
Oh yeah.
It really jumps out the glass at you. It's just I do a lot of tastings. Yeah, I do a lot of tastings where Glencadam will be the first dram on the tasting a lot of times. So Glencadam 10, will be the first dram.
Right.
And every time I put my nose in the glass with Glencadam 10, I'm like, yeah, I do like this stuff.
Yes, there you guys go. So you can see that beautiful bottle.
Yeah, it's just bright and citrusy and zippy and lively.
Oh,
it's a great example of clean, crisp bourbon cask. Again, I love a heavier cask type. I really do.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's something honest and pure about a clean, crisp bourbon cask. You're showing the spirit. The spirit's really shining through. That bourbon, that American oak, the Quercus albas, softening things up. We use a lot of first fill bourbon on Glencadam as well. It's just like a bright punch in the face.
Yeah, there is. Bourbon, I'll ask him here for a little bit. So my buddy, he's up in New York, Bourbon. He found an old bottle of Glencadam. Well, I'll show you a picture in a minute so he want to answer his question. Apparently, Mr. Jiggs has got the Origin, the 10, 11, 13, 15, 17. Man, nice. Wow. You're awesome. You got more than I have. That's even better.
That's what I want to say.
Hey, Bourbon Neophyte. Go check out Bourbon Neophyte's channel as well. Andy wants to know, what bottle are you excited to try in the whole place tonight? Well, he got on the stream, so he hasn't really had a chance to look around yet. But I will let you know that part of the things is being the global ambassador. When you come to the castle, you get a choice of anything in the castle to try that you'd like. So he has many things to choose from. I think
I'm going to have a look now. I haven't really seen the shelves at all. I literally walked straight in and we opened the laptop. So
yeah, because they were late in traffic, unfortunately. So we wanted to get you guys first, and then since we're here the rest of the night, we'll be good and we'll take care of that problem. Okay, so it's an 80 proof Glencadam 15. It was a really pretty tube. Here, let me grab my phone.
Okay, I think I know.
You know what that is? Okay.
I think I do.
Here.
Yeah, so that was the first Glencadam single malt release we came out with.
Really?
I believe so, yes. So that was the Glencadam 15 was the first age statement Glencadam that Angus Dundee Distillers, who I work for, actually released. I think it's a darker tube from, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Let's see.
40% alcohol. It'll still be straight bourbon cask. We have one at the distillery, but we don't have too many of those. I don't have one of those in my house, but I think I know which one you're talking about. We tended with all our age statements in Glencadam to crank it up to 46% non-chill filtered and natural color a few years after that release. And we actually, to be honest, did that as a difference maker. When we did that, not many other people were doing it. Again, with the people getting into their whiskeys, more people are searching for that style of whiskey at 46%. Non-chill filtered, etc. But when we first came out with the Glencadams at that, we were one of the few in the markets from a single malt producer to be doing it. But if it is the 15 I'm thinking of, then it's what our original first age statement Glencadam.
Ben, you sent me too many pictures of freaking whiskey. I'm gonna find it here. It's a problem we have in this industry is people like to send us lots of pictures of whiskey.
Yeah, well, while you look for that, I'll tell you.
I'll
tell you a story about Glencadam 10.
Perfect. Just send me the picture again. They don't have to look for it.
So Glencadam 10, one of the, I said I really do love this whiskey, and I'll tell you another story when I get to the 15. But Glencadam 10, I gave a bottle of this recently, or not recently, it was last year, to one of my friends. His friend was getting married, and his friend was a big whiskey drinker, loved his stuff. But my mate, who was his best man, didn't really drink whiskey. He's one of those guys, you keep giving him whiskeys, I kind of like a beer, whatever. But you knew I worked for a whiskey brand, so he asked me to give him a bottle. I gave him a bottle of Glencadam 10. A few weeks after the wedding, I asked him how the wedding went, and he said, wedding was really good, but the night before was difficult. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, we opened that Glencadam that you gave me, and he said, we had a dram, and you know what? It was the first whiskey I've really enjoyed. I really loved it. I was like, oh, great, that's amazing. He was like, yeah, it was too amazing. He said, we had a second, then we had a third. He said, yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
Okay.
The exact one. So that'll be the first release. So he's like, yeah, we had a third. And before we knew it, we finished the whole bottle between us the night before the wedding. And it was about 4 a.m. He said the day of the wedding, the guy who was getting married was standing next to the priest. And he was practically being propped up by the priest because he was that hungover. He's sort of swaying back and forward. And my mate, who's also hungover, was in the front row next to the guy's mother. And his mother tapped him on the shoulder and went, "I've never seen my son this emotional. He's got tears in his eyes. He's shaking,
that's awesome."
And she just thought he was really emotional, waiting for his wife to be to come on.
Oh my god!
And the guy was clinging on to life. So he managed to get through the whole wedding, and everyone just thought he was really emotional. And then both of them, him and my mate, went and got a hair of the dog, and they were good for the after party. So they got away with it scot free.
That's hilarious.
It was quite funny, but it's just such a nice whiskey that he now, will have a whiskey with me as well. So
that's
awesome. It's that sort of like gateway in.
That's a great story. I love it. Yeah, Bourbon, if you find any more of those, the answer is yes. Just buy them all. Well, this problem will be solved.
Yeah. I just love it. It's so sweet and bright and fresh and creamy. And
it's so good.
Yeah.
Introduce them to Z-Biotics. There you go.
Yeah, in Scotland, we just have an iron brew.
Yeah.
You don't know what an iron brew is. It's like a fizzy drink in Scotland. It's bright orange. Yep. Coca-Cola is the best-selling fizzy drink in pretty much every country except Scotland.
Really? Yeah. Iron Brew sells better?
By miles, yeah. It's pretty much the only country in the world where Coke is not the best seller. Iron Brew is a great hangover.
I've had it a couple times, but never for a hangover. That's good to know.
Change your life, my friend. Change your life.
Yeah, because I know we've been to some Robert Burns nights. They pass those out. So, yeah, now I know why.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Iron Brew. But anyway, yeah, that's the 10. The bright, crisp, fresh style is what it is. I love it. It's just it's such a pure, honest example of straight bourbon.
For sure. Yeah, there you go. Eric's got 2 of them in the fridge right now. Nice. JD's got a Glencadam 17 triple cask Portwood. Very nice.
Yeah, that's a very good one. So we have a newer version of that one now, which is just called the 17 Portwood, which is a tawny port release. Actually, it's a ruby port release.
An open 15.
But I actually had that 17 at my wedding. So
nice.
In Scotland, when you get married, we have a quaich, which is like a little bowl.
Okay.
And what happens I have to drink from it, and my wife would drink from it as well, and it's to prove that we're not poisoning each other. So we're drinking the same thing.
That's why.
But my wife is Swedish, so she poured Swedish whiskey in, and I poured 17 Portwood in, and then we shared it together. So we made a blended malt, and that's what we had.
That's awesome.
As we were being married, as we were saying our vows. So
very cool.
So good choice.
Oh yeah, the 15 guys. I was drinking this last night.
15 is a cracker. I love the 15. As I said, the 10 and the 15 are the absolute pillars.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So the differences between the 10 and the 15. The 10 is a little bit more zippy. The 10 is a bit more fresh. It's a bit more vibrant. Where the 15 shines is texture. This thing, the texture on the palate of the 15 is killer. It's like really dense and chewy and weighty for a straight bourbon cask release. Really, really heavy. It's absolutely stunning on the mouthfeel in the 15 for me. I absolutely love it. It's got a richness on the nose as well. Softens off some of those more bright citrus notes. Becomes a little bit more dense. But yeah, the texture on it is absolutely amazing. Another thing I should mention when it comes to production is we have classic dunnage warehousing at Glencadam.
Oh, very nice.
So for anyone unaware, there are 3 main warehouses in Scotland. You have palletized. You'll tend to keep younger whiskey on palletized warehouse, as it sounds. It's pallets. The cask stack this way, and they can go about 11 high. Palletized warehouses are really great for efficiency. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is you get a lot of whiskey in a small room. So if this was a palletized warehouse, like a Jenga set, you could literally have this all the way up to the door with whiskey, all the way at the top, all the way at the bottom. And the only way to get to the stuff at the back is to take out the stuff at the front. Makes sense. It's just completely
sure.
That's the reason that you only put younger stuff in palletized, because if you have a leak somewhere, you'll never find it. So your losses are actually a little bit higher.
Interesting.
Technically, your palletized should actually be the best for losses. You should get the least losses in a palletized warehouse, because everything is stacked together so tightly that they insulate really well, and it keeps it quite a consistent temperature.
Interesting.
But because any kind of leakage you'll never find, it actually is not great for it. The other is racked. So we have some racked at Glencadam, and we do have racked warehousing at Tomintoul as well. That, instead of going on a pallet like this, slots in this way.
Okay.
So your cask ends are facing you.
Sure.
And then you can have old stock in a racked warehouse, that's fine.
Right.
So that's what a lot of people use is racked. The last is dunnage. Dunnage is the oldest style. You're only allowed to stack 3 high, traditionally open earth floor.
Okay.
It used to be 4 high. It's now legally only 3.
Why is
health
that?
And safety. Because you have to put it up by hand in a dunnage. So if a cask falls off and you try and catch it, your knees are going through your feet. You know, you're becoming a very small man very quickly.
Yeah, that's not good.
It's only 3 high legally.
Okay,
But the smell in a dunnage is incredible. Big stone walls, very little temperature swings. Dunnage is probably still the best for your
one thing
losses.
I've never run is in a dunnage. I really badly want to go in a dunnage.
You have to. There's nothing that smells like a dunnage.
I bet it smells
if I could get it in like a cologne, I'd use it. I don't know how much my wife would enjoy it, but I promise you I'd use it. That's good. Yeah, but I love this one. I mean, on the story of my wife, she also works in whiskey, by the way. But I bought a miniature of the 15 a few years back.
Okay.
In New Year's. So in New Year's in Scotland, we have an event called Hogmanay, which is a big celebration at New Year's.
Okay.
And I live in Edinburgh, which is the capital, and we had all our friends in a really great whiskey bar. So think something like this, not quite this many bottles, but something like this. And we had rented the whole place out, had a lot of whiskey. There's a lot of stories I'm legally never allowed to tell again from that night. I've like signed contracts never to speak about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I learned stuff about my friends that night that I don't want to speak about again. But anyway, New Year's, we went outside into like a big open park, because you can see Edinburgh Castle from the park.
Sure.
And they do fireworks over Edinburgh Castle when you have New Year's. So you sing Old Lang Syne, stuff like that. So went outside. I got my little bottle of 15, which I bought, this little miniature. I remember cracking it open, sharing it with my girlfriend, now my wife at the time, looking into love in my life's eyes, thinking this is such a good whiskey. I was like, this is amazing. What a beautiful moment. This is going to be a fantastic year. The year was 2020. It was the worst year of my life. The whiskey was the best moment of 2020 by far.
I'm sure at that point.
I was on furlough for like 9 months after that. People asked me what was the best part of 2020. It's like, well, it's about like 17 seconds in or something when I opened Glencadam 15. It was all downhill from there.
Oh, that's too funny.
But yeah, it was a great moment. I still remember it very well, and I remember what happened afterwards. So
there you go.
Luckily, I've not went into lockdown every time I've drunk Glencadam 15.
That's a plus.
So don't think that's what happened.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, Eric said he's rolled in the dunnage at Springbank. That's cool. Sounds like fun, and I guess Donald celebrates it with his family there in Scotland. So that's cool.
Yeah, dunnages are just amazing.
Very cool.
There's an atmosphere in a dunnage. You can't really explain it, to be honest. You have to see it. But yeah,
on the list for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, the texture on this thing, it's just so heavy.
Delicious. It's so good.
It's silky. It's creamy. It's weighty. It's fruity. It's just a great whiskey.
And a reasonable price in the States too. It's still about $90. If you can find it. So it's a very reasonable price. Now the next one we're going to a little more expensive.
Yeah.
The
next two are interesting because these are the only two whiskies that we'll try that is not our stock. So we purchased Glencadam in 2003. So this was stock that came with the distillery from Allied Distillers. So, the interesting one about the next one, which is the 21-year-old, is I can't get a hold of a bottle of this if I knocked on the door at the distillery.
You're kidding me.
By the way, there's a cork in this one. We pulled it out, so as in there's a cork in the bottle.
Oh yes, I see that. Well, it happens.
Yeah, it does happen. I literally can't get a hold of this bottle, and the reason for that is Glencadam was closed from 2000 to 2003. So from 2000 to 2003.
Yes. You have to combine one or finish it, one or the other.
So we have a 3-year hole in our stock. And that hole in the stock has slowly ran up our range.
Okay.
It hit our 15-year-old first, because that was the only thing we really had on the market.
Sure.
And when it hit the 15, that's the reason we came out with the 13-year-old. So if you ever see Glencadam 13 in the market, which was a batch release. That was only supposed to be a limited batch that would stay until we got the stock of the 15 back. However, it's quite popular, so now it just stays as a limited batch.
Seems fair.
This is now hitting that 18-year-old, so we have no stock of this. I have no stock of this. Wow. I've got half a bottle in the flat, and that's about it. I don't have it at the distillery. Once we get through that hole in the stock, the 18 will come back. However, when it comes back, our master blender, Ian, will have full control of his 21. So, or his 21-year-old is what we're talking about. So he might replicate this. He might make something different. So you might never get something that's exactly like this.
So his suggestion is you need to buy one as soon as you find one.
I'm not saying that I don't expect like prices to fly up because we're not a big enough brand, but what you will get is potentially a bottle of Glencadam where you can't get a similar style.
Sure.
It all depends on what Ian wants to do.
Yeah.
Again, he can decide to replicate this, or he can decide to make his own.
Yeah.
And we're not going to know what he's going to do until probably another 2-3 3 years when we've got the stock.
Well, Dean, I suggest then find a friend in Tucson to get you a bottle. I think that's the solution for you. I don't know in Tucson, so I can't help you with this, but if you find no one, so there you go. So Donald wants to know, he says, divisive questions. Who makes the best lemonade, Bar or Schweppes, and does it pair well with king rib in the chippy? I'm assuming you know what any of this means. I don't.
I mean, Schweppes is classic, but I like all the stuff that Bar does. Okay. So I have, just because my local like corner shop only sold Bar cola and Iron Brew and Bar lemonade. So I like, again, it's that like flavor your childhood kind of thing. But I do like Schweppes as well. So it would work with that as well. And what was the second part of that question? Does it pair well with a king rib? Yeah. I would say pretty much anything pairs well with a king rib, to be honest. That's some S tier food. So you could pour me some garbage whiskey or garbage lemonade, and it would still pair well with that kind of stuff.
There you go.
Yeah. Again, that's some good hungover food or after drinking. That'll keep you alive the next day. I promise you right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's a plus.
Chippy on the way home. That saved me a good few nights. I don't know if I'd be here without it, to be honest.
You see, that's a good thing, though. Oh, that stuff's excellent. So,
this one, because it's the older stock, this one will use a little bit more second fill casks.
Okay.
That came from the previous ownership. Mm-hmm. With that, you get, again, the spirit character shines through. So sometimes when you get to old age statements, people have this thought process that first fill is always better. That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, depends your goal.
First fill will give you more extraction.
Sure.
It can soften the spirit.
Okay.
However, if you want your spirit character to shine through, especially at older age statements, you often want to tone back the first fill or you'll get too much wood.
Sure.
So you'll often see older age statements in second fill,
or
even refill. Often the case.
Pretty often,
and then that way your spirit character will go through. But it really all depends on whether you want these old age statements for your spirit to be at the front, or whether you're wanting the cask to take over, and that's down to the blender. So these ones have more of like a honeydew melon kind of note for it.
Yeah,
for me. But you do get that almost like dusty, woody freshness in there as well. Wow. And I always enjoy trying the 21 because I know I might not try the 21 again.
I understand.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And again, with the next one, this is a problem that is just
I've never had the next one, so this is like been on my unicorn bucket list for a long time, so I'm glad we're about to complete this.
Yeah, so again, it's a problem that's moving forward. So we have just got over the problem with our 18-year-old. I would expect the 18-year-old to come into the US.
Good, because that's another one I've never had, is the 18, so that'd be good.
And so our master blender, Ian, made his own 18.
Okay.
He didn't replicate the last one.
Okay.
And it's incredible.
Awesome.
If you like the 10, the 15,
I love them, so I'm sold.
So the 18, I expect, because it is core range, will be in the US market sometime in the future, probably just when we have more stock.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Because again, the issue you have when you have this hole is you get enough stock to make an 18, but then if you use all of your stock to make an 18, you've got no 21.
That's true too.
So you always have to hold stock back, otherwise it's a problem you're just pushing forward.
Right.
So there's this balancing act where you need to use enough to make a release, but then not use all of it so that the stuff above it, and it's just, you go down a rabbit hole.
It perpetuates the whole problem. Yeah. All right. So this is a beautiful box that I've never seen nor tried. Now, this is one that I've wanted to try for a long, long time. This is beautiful. Oh, and it does sing to you, so that makes it even better. It's got nice velvet in here. As you guys know, I like these beautiful boxes. It's really pretty in here. Doesn't come with a pillow, though, but that's okay. I'm sure it'll be fantastic. Now, it's very special. Let's take this out very carefully. I know this is very expensive. So let's see. There we go.
Better not break my balls, sir. You're getting kicked out this live stream.
Exactly. There we go. There. All right. Perfect. Oh, wow. Ooh, the box even smells nice. I like the wood on that. That's beautiful. That's quite beautiful. Now, this part, you guys can see, beautiful bottle. So tell us a little about this 25. Wow, so, this is
again, 25. A lot of the stuff we covered with the 21 is the same Talking points for 25. This is stock that is from the previous ownership.
Holy
So this
crap.
is from the cast that we took over. That hole in the stock will hit the 25. It's currently hitting the 21, but it's going to keep moving forward. You know, grandfather time never stops marching or whatever. So it's going to hit the 25.
Sadly.
Yep. And it'll go off the market and then it'll come back. So much like the 21, this is a Glencadam that you don't really get to try too much of this at this age.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now, is this the oldest thing you guys have on the market, this 25? Or is there an older stuff that's very, very limited?
This is the oldest thing we have on the market. However, we turn 200 next year and something might come out for that. So you might see something older come out for next year that will be very limited.
Okay.
But this is the oldest Glencadam we have on the market.
Holy crap. That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, this one for me has like this,
gosh.
like almost like it's sparkly. It's like sparkly in the tongue.
And it's like pure butterscotch.
Butterscotch is a great note.
Oh my gosh. And the viscosity of oil is crazy. This reminds me, this is probably the most butterscotchy scotch thing I've ever had. It reminds me of, you ever had Friskinder?
No.
It's a Dutch single malt. Wow.
I probably have had it in the Netherlands though, but I tend to be pretty drunk in the Netherlands, so probably don't remember. But I wouldn't be surprised.
Wow. That's truly exceptional. Now, based on that, things that was made, 384 of these? I'm guessing very hard to get a hold of these.
I couldn't tell you how difficult it is in the market.
Okay.
So I don't want to state it. It's not vastly available.
Yeah, so if you find one, I guess, guys, buy it, because
but I
holy
don't
crap.
know. I don't know how available it is.
You need this in your life. That's all I can tell you. Wow. That is truly spectacular.
The thing with these kind of whiskeys, like your older bourbon styles, is
Lord.
I really think you need to have tried a few whiskeys to really
appreciate it. Because you're right. If you just had this, I don't think you could appreciate it for what this is, for sure.
Well, what I mean is, if you're new to whiskey and you're like, you want to try an old whiskey, some people think old whiskey needs to be dense and heavy. You know, it needs to have all these probably sherry or super oaky notes come through. But if you've had a few whiskeys before and your palate's reasonably developed and you can pick up the beauty and the sort of delicacy of Glencadam, that's where this properly shines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good God. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris, that's how I feel. That is one of the most spectacular things I think I've ever tasted.
Yeah. It's a killer whiskey.
Oh my gosh.
I absolutely love the 25 and I think it's amazing. But you will often find people who are used to things like a Macallan 25 and they're like, this thing's too light. And you're like, it's lighter, yes, but there's a lot going on in there, but you kind of, that's what I mean by you need to have a palate to appreciate this.
For sure. This is just, it's heaven. It's unbelievable. Wow. Good gosh.
Yeah. So again, really to sum up Glencadam, this is a distillery with a lot of history. The spirit quality is really good, but it's very much under the radar. The vast majority of consumers have not heard of this yet. We're getting our name out there in the sort of whiskey world because, again, the spirit quality is good.
Right.
But there's still long strides to take with Glencadam.
Make it easy. It's just fucking awesome. That's all you need to know. That solves your problem. Yeah. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
Good gosh.
Yeah, it's cracking stuff across the board.
Okay.
So we have the two peated ones. You want to do those as well, or do you want to skip to the cigar?
Nah, we do both. It's fine. There's no reason not to. I mean, it would be rude to the people not to show them.
Okay, fine.
I won't say no.
So we're jumping back to Tomintoul and finishing on two peated expressions. As I did say at the start of the chat, we do a fully peated Tomintoul, which is known as Old Ballantrae, or fully peated spirit is Old Ballantrae. Anything that is a peated Tomintoul means that it has both peated and unpeated spirit in there. So there's both peated and unpeated casks if it's a peated Tomintoul. If everything going in is peated casks, then it's a Ballantrae. That's the separation between the two.
Are you allowed to tell us what the percentage of unpeated to peated is, or? It just kind of changes.
Can vary.
It varies.
It varies. Yeah, it's not a case of me holding back.
Okay.
information.
It's just whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It depends, because with the master blender with these releases, some casks will have more smoke in them, and so
Sure,
them, some
that makes
softer.
sense. So yeah,
it's a never moving.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's a never moving process with these. So the Tomintoul
Nice.
peated, this is our entry level peated one, effectively.
Okay.
So this one is like similar to going right back to the start with the Tula,
Okay.
but we're adding in smoke. Yeah. So the price point again is like $35 or something. So it's around what the Tula is, give or take. Whereas that is a soft, creamy style. It's classic Tomintoul. This one's going to be smoky because it's going to have that Speyside peat.
And then you said it's all Speyside peat, which is super unique. There's very few distillers that use that, so it's very cool.
Not many. Speyside peat is traditionally a little softer. So peat's a young form of coal. It's compressed organic matter. What that organic matter comprises of does affect your flavour. So off the west coast of Scotland, in your Isla region, and your off the side, it tends to be more coastal vegetation, which are often higher in iodine content. So iodine can give you the medicinal notes that you get in something like a Lefroy, which I love.
Yes, I do too.
But Speyside peat often, especially for us, comes across more like, it's almost like an ashy burning leaves.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because the composition is very different to West Coast peat.
Wow.
In style.
That's
so
delicious.
this one is designed to be soft, like classic Tomintoul, but also smoky. So
yeah,
like balance
very
those two things together. Yeah. So if someone's looking for a peated Speyside, which is already reasonably unusual, but they don't want to spend crazy money on one, and it's also going to be it's not going to be crazy aggressive. So if you want just a nice, easy drinking peated Scotch,
for sure,
that's where this one ticks all the boxes for.
This might be a good one too to get people that are into just starting to get into peat. This would be a good one for them to have
Absolutely. So it's a gateway drug. I use it as a gateway drug all the time.
Oh, it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for the price point, $35. Can't beat that.
Because don't get me wrong, I love all those whiskies off the west.
Oh, of course.
But if I want to, like, let's say I have a friend who wants to try smoky whiskey, and I don't want to throw them straight into an Ardbeg.
Yeah,
I can lead them in that way, and you can guide them in through the door with something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It is fabulous.
Absolutely, it's a good example of our peated spirit.
Definitely.
However, the last one that we're going to talk about is potentially the most complicated by design of all the ones we've done.
Okay.
And I'll explain what you mean by that.
Sounds good to me. Oh yeah, the cigar malt.
So, I'm sure many people on this chat have heard of Dalmore cigar malt before. Our master blender Ian loves his cigars, and he also loved Dalmore cigar malt. He liked the whiskey, and he really thought he could do something with our spirit at Tomintoul that could do a job much like Dalmore cigar malt. So he made this.
Okay.
What I mean by the fact that this is possibly the most complicated by design is he was basically set free into the warehouse to do whatever he wanted, choose whatever cask he wanted to basically fit a flavor profile that he was aiming for. And what that was is he wanted to make a whiskey that does the opposite of a cigar.
Okay.
A cigar will start quite hot and get sweeter as you go. This is designed to start sweet, savory, rich, nutty, spicy, and then the smoke to come on the back. So some people think this is meant to taste like a cigar.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Not okay.
And it's also not a whiskey designed purely for people that smoke cigars. This is amazing with barbecued meats. The Texas barbecue here is incredible.
I bet. Yeah, but it's probably great.
This with barbecued meats is incredible. It's rich, it's savory, it's sweet. There's a spiciness in there as well. I get a lot of sort of savory, rich notes in this. And then the smoke comes on the palate, so it comes at the back. The peated whiskey going in is just under 20 years old going into this thing.
Holy crap.
And 20 years ago, we were only peating for about a week and a week rather than 3 and 3. So quite rare the casks that are going in. But it's not designed to be overly smoky.
Okay.
The smoke is meant to be there. It sticks a lot of the sweetness of the Oloroso sherry to you.
Dang.
It's just a lot going on in this one.
That's awesome. Well, don't worry, Dustin. We're not talking about that brand, so who cares? We're talking about Tomintoul, so we're good.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't checked out Top Shelf, go check out Dustin's channel as well.
This one is also cheaper than Dalmore's.
I'm not going
to say anything bad about Dalmore, but
no,
ours is cheaper and has a smoke component. Yes. It doesn't have any.
You're right. That is a good point. Yeah, and it's significantly different in price.
Yeah.
And you can find this one.
Yeah, true. So again, it's not meant to taste like a cigar. It's not only for cigar smokers. This is a whiskey that is savory, rich, spicy, and smoky. It has a lot going on. It has a long finish to it. again by design, so that way you can have a cigar or have your meats or your dark chocolate or your roasted hazelnuts or whatever you're having, and you don't have to keep going back to the whiskey because it's dissipating like this.
43. Okay.
We tried it. We did try it in lots of different ABVs. We settled on this because
43. Okay.
We want this to pair perfectly with the cigars, and we don't want the whiskey to dominate or the cigar. So I've done a lot of like whiskey and chocolate pairings and stuff with like cast strength whiskeys, which are great, but the whiskey absolutely dominates. They're all beautiful, but you lose the thing you're having it with because the whiskey is so powerful.
Sure.
So this is designed to still have a softness to it and a creaminess to it, and not to overwhelm, so that it's all about flavor. It's all about those balancing of flavors between what you're having it with. Again, be that meats or cigars or chocolate or whatever.
Definitely. It's delicious.
I do really love this one.
Yeah, if you guys are looking for a really good cigar, this stuff's fabulous. I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I do really love this one. I think it's excellent. This one has done well for us.
So I know it's the end of what you brought. I do have one thing special, which we talked about parts you guys don't know about till right now. Now, this is something that I've held on to for years that we're going to open tonight. Now, this is the old 27 year, which is also peated. We're going to open this. Now, this is not for the show. This is just for this, not for the thing this evening. So sorry where it's coming. You're not getting this. So I can't replace it.
Yeah, this is a very old bottle.
This is extremely old, and I found this in the back of a goody years ago, and they're like, would you like this? I'm like, I don't know what that is, but sure. It says 27 on it, and it's a very reasonable price. Works for me. So
yeah, I can't remember what the price was when it first came out, but it was ridiculous value for money for a 27.
Oh, it was. I think I paid like 180, something like that. Yeah. Something just stupid. Now, the real question is this cork.
Do watch that cork on something that old.
Please don't tear. No, it's gonna tear. It's gonna tear. That's all right. Yep, it's gonna tear. Not that that's a surprise. Yeah, I figured that was gonna happen. Oh well, it's okay. We have a solution. It's called push it in and filter this puppy later.
Yeah, the things with whiskeys is, especially of whiskeys of that age, if they've been sitting up like this, your cork will dry out over time.
Which is what I figured was gonna happen.
So wines you'll often store in your wine rack like this, that keeps the cork nice and wet. The problem with that with whiskey is the strength of the whiskey will start to eat your cork over time. So when you have an expensive whiskey, that say you've got one that you don't open very often, or maybe you're holding on for it for whatever, make sure you turn it and put it back every so often.
Which is just what's going to happen.
Just make sure you wet that cork and put it back. Let's say you've got something on your shelf, you're holding on for it for a good amount of time. Turn it, put it back. Otherwise, it'll stop that cork from just sitting in the air.
Exactly.
And then slowly it'll dry out over time, which is what can
I'll pull this out later. I'm sure you'd like some of this.
I would, and I'm going to make sure it's in the non-peated.
Yeah.
So that's consistent.
So anything else you want to tell them? Otherwise, we're going to sign off here in a minute because we have to get ready for everyone that's coming here in person. And there's a few of them behind me, so I'm sure they're going, when do we get the whiskey, please?
So the main thing I want to say is, again, we're a family-owned company, and there's not too many family-owned companies left. We have two wonderful distilleries. Tomintoul is exceptionally versatile. It can do nice, gentle, and soft. It can do bright and sort of fresh and exotic, or it can do rich and smoky as well. So it's a kind of distillery that's got a real versatility to us for us. And then Glencadam's just such a killer whiskey for the amount of people that know about it. It's
it's
an absolute hidden gem. And the whiskey coming out of there has been good for 200 years. It's just people have not had the opportunity to buy it as a single malt, or even when they do have the opportunity, they don't notice it or pick it up.
Well, the good news is 30 plus new people this evening that'll get to try it. So
yeah, which is amazing. So again, when you don't have those big marketing budgets, things like this really, really mean a lot to us.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I can't thank you enough for having me on.
We're glad you came.
I'm really glad that you guys were able to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad that we could do this before everybody that doesn't live here gets a chance to hear about this stuff. And then later this evening, we've got a guy coming that is celebrating his 75th birthday this evening. So we're going to be having a great time with him as well. So
sounds good.
This is great. Cody, thank you very much. Cheers.
Lanjava.
Absolutely. We will see you guys next week on Monday night. So thank you guys for being here. And Dr. Don will be here on next Friday. So cheers, everyone. We'll see you guys then.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for listening to me. Cheers.